Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. This time for June 27th through what? July 3rd. I almost said 5th, but I knew that was wrong. I had to look at my paper over there. Anyway, this is a pretty interesting week. Let me pull up the highlights. If you're into this Gemini energy that we've got going on with Mercury and Venus, then you might be into the lineup of this week's highlights that we have because there's quite a plethora of energy. This is not a big major week or a really bad week or a really good week, but there's quite a bit going on. I mean, we have Mars sextiling Saturn, awesome. New moon in Cancer, looking forward to it. Venus sextiles Jupiter, that's great. We could use some sextile energy. Mars squares Pluto, ow. Mercury trines Saturn and Mercury squares Neptune. So it's a good mixture of, I don't want to just say bad and good, but it is it's quite a mixture of energy in my opinion. So I guess if you're looking for versatility or a lot of energy to work with, then this is a excellent week for you. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into Monday. So on Monday, we're going to be having the moon make a sextile to Mars and trine Saturn as Mars sextiles Saturn. So the moon is in Gemini. We're getting ready for that new moon in Cancer. Let me go ahead and actually pull up the chart here. So the biggest thing here is that the moon is going to be near Mercury, but the moon applies to Mercury actually later Sunday night. I believe we talked about that in the last horoscope. So there will be this chatty energy, this kind of restless energy. I feel like if you want to place anxiety on any number of signs, I think any of the mutable signs can like deal with restlessness and anxiousness. And I think the moon conjoining Mercury, if you are someone that, doesn't like a lot of stimulation, can feel very, I don't want to say very overwhelmed, but quite a bit going on. And as the moon is separating from Mercury, right? The moon's in Gemini, the moon's about how we feel, the moon's about, what we're paying attention to as far as like our body, our emotions in the moment. The moon wanes and waxes, it goes through phases. So the moon's always changing, we're always changing, the vibe's always changing. And as it separates from Mercury, I think on Monday morning, there's this sense of like understanding what needs to go on, what needs to happen. Like the moon in Gemini is like communicating your feelings. Again, Mercury is all about like logistics and planning and data. And I think as the moon conjoins Mercury, there's this like kind of going over your checklist. But as the moon separates from Mercury, and as we actually get into Monday morning, that's when the moon is going to be again, pretty much at the same time later on the day. It will sextile Mars and it will trine Saturn as Mars is sextiling Saturn. So here's the reality. We have a pretty constructive Mars. Like when Mars retrogrades later on this year, it will be trining Saturn the whole time, which is nice, but it's going to be squaring Neptune. So it does have its issues. But when Mars enters Taurus here, it's going to make a really hardcore square to Saturn and conjoin Uranus in the North Node. That's not looking too good. Why I'm bringing this up is as Mars sextiles Saturn, this is a really supportive, really constructive transit. I mean, Mars is the planet of fights and conflicts and action and energy, and it's in its home sign. And, if you're someone like me who's a day chart who has a really gnarly Mars, sometimes Mars transits can be quite intense. But, now that Mars is kind of away from Jupiter and Jupiter was expanding all of the Mars energy and just really, making it larger than life, we get this moment where there's some constructive energy with Saturn. Saturn's all about discipline, maturity, time, being constructive. It constricts things. And as Saturn's retrograde, like Saturn's really about like, your plans and taking your time with things. And as it's kind of retrograde, there's this sense of like, all right, we know what work we have to do. Saturn is now going over the same part of the sky that it's been over the past few months. But this time again, like we talked about the last, a couple weeks ago when Saturn stationed retrograde, I said, it's kind of like a pick your side kind of moment. You're on this side or you're on that side. And it is really a sense of like, Saturn is also, again, discipline, control, authorities, power, but it's in an air sign. So that has a lot to do with your ideas. It has a lot to do with, the functionality of your ideas, the systems that, or the ideas, or gosh, I'm all over the place today. It has to do with ideas is what I'm trying to get to. So I look at Saturn in Aquarius and Mars and Aries sextiling it is like, well, for example, when you're in a group dynamic, oftentimes it's easy to get lost in what your role is in a group dynamic. However, I believe with Mars and Aries sextiling Saturn, there is this sense of like knowing your place. Like Mars and Aries is like, I want to charge, I want to fight, I want to go for this. I have all of the energy, I have all of the ambition that I need. But as it sextiles Saturn, there is this sense of like, okay, we have a place for you. Like, this is where you need to direct your energy. Mars conjoining Jupiter might have been like, hey, really good for like, expansive energy, really good for initiating stuff and being really ambitious. But it could have been hard to really figure out where to place that energy because Mars conjoining Jupiter is just pedal to the metal, just go. Mars and Aries sextiling Saturn is like, there's a really crucial, I don't want to even say crucial, but there is a very clear space and a very clear plan, a very clear path for where to put your energy. And I believe on Monday, as the moon's in Gemini, again, we're kind of like going over our list. We know what we need to do. We know what we're getting ready for. The moon is going to be, again, sextiling Mars, trining Saturn. This is, in my opinion, this is kind of like getting, we're getting ready for a new moon as we get into the beginning of the month. And for the next little while, the new moons line up with the beginning of the month. Like, I really appreciate that because I really like starting over at the beginning of the month. I like doing things with lunar cycles. I mean, a lot of life is controlled by lunar cycles, to be honest, which is kind of funny. But as this moon is getting ready, I mean, it's in its dark phase too. I think this is a lot about like, preparation, getting your shit together, knowing where to put your energy, having a constructive place to put your energy. Like Mars and Aries sextiling Saturn and Aquarius is like, for example, you don't want to just like start over on a new moon or on the beginning of the month. You want to like have everything ready before, and then right when it's like that, it's kind of like getting your clothes laid out for the day before or getting things laid out so they're already prepared for you. This is a lot of what Monday is just preparation, but it's the moon in Gemini. It's going over your checklist. It's kind of going a little bit everywhere. But Mars and Aries, it's like you have the energy, and it's sextiling Saturn and Aquarius. We just have a lot of a much better, a much more clear path of where to go, what path to take, essentially. So let's go to Tuesday. And on Tuesday, we have actually quite a bit going on here. The moon ingresses into Cancer. Then we have the new moon in Cancer. It squares Jupiter, and Venus sextiles Jupiter later on in the evening. To be honest with you, I'm totally ready for this new moon. I absolutely love this new moon. There's a lot to like about it. So the first thing is the moon goes into Cancer, and the moon in Gemini is like la 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 la, and then it goes into Cancer, and then everything is like, all right, let's kind of tone it down. It's nighttime. We don't need the loud noises. You know what I mean? When it's like your parents would understand when you have kids, it's like time to shut it down, time to calm the energy down a little bit. But this is the new moon in Cancer. I feel like I've talked. It's funny. I talk about almost every single day of the astrology like 14 times because I go over every day in my weekly horoscope. I go over every day in my monthly overview on my Patreon. Then I do monthly rising sign horoscope. So I talk about it 12 different times. So I feel like I've said this a lot. So I feel like I'm repeating myself, but a lot of you, this is going to be the first time you hear it. But this new moon in Cancer is really about like, what do you need to take care of? This Jupiter in Aries is angular, or I shouldn't say angular. It's in the superior position, and this new moon is going to be squaring Jupiter. Jupiter is also getting ready to station retrograde. Jupiter is all about philosophy, hope, your vision, idealism, beliefs, faith. And it's in Aries. It's just like, shoot first, ask questions later. Just go in charge and you'll figure out the rest later. And as Jupiter's getting ready to station retrograde, it's not going to be that simple. Like as Jupiter stations retrograde, and we'll be talking about that later on when that happens. I believe that's at the end of July. There is this sense of not having that Jupiter juice to kind of just get you by. And you're going to have to be more reliant on your will and your own sense of like determination to do the Jupiter and Aries thing. And this new moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter and Aries is kind of asking you to say, hey, Jupiter and Aries, sure, you can Kool-Aid man bust through the door, but you just broke my wall. New moon in Cancer is like, we could do the Jupiter and Aries thing all day long. I think the analogy I was making in my monthly overview on my Patreon was, let's say you're like a guy who, just bought a drum set and you want to play drums, but you've got a family and kids. It's like, well, it's 10 o'clock now and the kids are trying to sleep. Time to play quietly or put the drums away for a minute. And this new moon in Cancer is a focus on priorities, on taking care of things, on necessity. But it's squaring this Jupiter in Aries. And there is this sense of like, Something I was also thinking about is Cancer is the exaltation of Jupiter. And there is this sense of Jupiter in Aries, just like, you can do anything, you can do it all. And this new moon in Cancer is like, you can do it all, but do you need to? Like, sure, for example, some people can, stay awake all night long to get some work done or do this or do that. But is that good for you? Like, for example, like something I think about, like, I guess as a YouTuber, or I mean, also as an astrologer too, there's a lot of ways that I have to take care of myself, because when you're on video and you're presenting, it's just easier to see all of your flaws, and your energy levels are like really expensive a lot more. And so there's a lot of ways where I feel like I could do a lot more, but I mean, that's why you see burnout with a lot of content creators, because they try to do all of these things and they don't really take care of themselves along the way. And I'm guilty of that too. But I look at this new moon in Cancer as like, you can do it all, but is it necessary? What do you need to take care of first? And the same thing with Jupiter and Aries, like something, if you're into war history, what's really interesting about war history is food. The logistics of getting soldiers fed and how food works. It is one of the most, and as far as my, like, I like war history, but like the food logistics of war history is always really interesting, because you can't fight a war if your soldiers aren't fed. And this new moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter and Aries is like, you can't be this Jupiter and Aries without getting a little bit of sleep. Gotta get a little sleep. And so I think at this new moon in Cancer, this is a really good time to just prioritize. Like, hey, sure, you're still in the middle of a war, and the war is going to be there tomorrow, but it's time to get some rest right now. It's time to focus on some needs and priorities and taking care of things. Now, at the same time, Venus is also sextiling Jupiter. And again, Venus is in Gemini. There is this need for stimulation. It's one of those things of like, Jupiter and Aries is like, we got to do this, we got to do that, but you could still have a little bit of fun at the same time. I feel like Venus in Gemini sextiling Jupiter and Aries is like, for example, like, let's say, I'm kind of almost drawing a blank with an example, but like, if you it's okay to put your work down and to have a little bit of fun. And I look at Venus in Gemini as like, there's this need for socializing. There's this need for stimulation. There's this need for questioning. There's this need for, conversation. And it's sextiling Jupiter and Aries. Like, put the work down and go and meet some people. Go and talk to people. Go and have a little bit more of a fun time. I think as Venus is in Gemini, sextiling Jupiter and Aries, this is, I think, also really helping Jupiter and Aries, because Jupiter and Aries could be like, again, your philosophy and your beliefs are so ingrained into your actions that if you're not doing enough, it can feel like you're worthless. And I think Venus and Gemini sextiling Jupiter and Aries is like, not everything has to be like about accomplishment. Not everything has to be about like fights and conflict. Like, it can be about fun. And same thing with, like, for example, like guns, for example, like shooting guns doesn't have to always be about war. You could shoot guns for fun. It's okay. It's okay to have a little bit of fun with things that are really, really intense. So I look at this as like, on Tuesday, if you've just been taking things like really seriously, like, don't be afraid to kind of like give yourself a little bit of rest. It's the summer. I remember, like, in the summers we used to bale hay, and it would be long days of work. Baling hay out in the sun. I don't know if for those that work on farms and ranches, baling hay is a fucking very labor intensive job. But once you're kind of done, what we would do is we'd go to the river and we go relax and float on the river for a little while, do a little bit of barbecue and have a little bit of fun. Not everything. And, we would have to, of course, get our work done. But, there's a sense of work hard, play hard. And I think there is a lot of play hard at this time. It's the new moon in Cancer. Like, you need to exercise your fun. You need to exercise your, good feelings. So I think as we get into Tuesday, don't settle down, focus on your priorities, focus on what needs to get taken care of. Because again, you can't do everything today. There's only 24 hours in the day. And so as the sun is starting to set, if you didn't get your work done, that's okay. You need to go have fun and, go enjoy time with your family or go enjoy time with your friends. I think that is really the message for Tuesday. So then we get to Wednesday, and really not a lot is going on Wednesday, to be honest. Like, the moon sextile Uranus, you guys know what I'm going to say about this. This ain't shit. Because look, the moon sextile Uranus, you can find a innovative way to be comfortable. That's the easiest way to delineate that. But what I want to talk about is on Wednesday, we're just getting off of this new moon. and it's still in its dark phase, and its first aspect really is just Uranus. Like after all the way through Cancer, it doesn't make an aspect until Thursday. It'll square Mars, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think Wednesday as this, I mean, it's still technically the new moon. The new moon doesn't really hit until like late Tuesday night. So I think on Wednesday, don't be in a rush. The moon's in Cancer. Enjoy the humidity in the air, enjoy the long summer days. And I think also too, a lot of this is like, what are your needs? What do you need to take care of? What is going to make you feel nurtured? What is going to make you feel, protected and safe? But I think what is important is if the moon sextile Uranus is really the only transit we have, you have to be innovative about these things. Uranus is in Taurus. Trying to find comfort in your old ways aren't going to work anymore. And you have to be innovative, or otherwise it's not going to work. Like, if you're just trying to do the same thing over and over again, I think it'll be really easy to be disappointed by this new moon versus if you really I think take Wednesday to really tune in with your body, tune in with your emotions, tune in with your soul, really say like what needs to be addressed. And, there's the sense of like comfort of like, for example, for me, what makes me feel comfortable is like comfort food. I love comfort food. Take me to a shitty breakfast diner and that's as comfortable as I get. But I know that's not necessarily like the best thing for me, right? And there's the place where like there's your comfort zone, which isn't always the best place. Like people, I get comments that are like, Cameron, you're so like, hustle culture and that shit's dead. And it's not. If you think hustle culture is crazy now, try being any time in history where most of people were slaves or they were, feudal or feudalists, and they were working on, fucking fields and shit like that where they didn't own anything. Hustle culture's been around for a lot longer than y'all think, and it's not a Pluto and Capricorn thing. It's important that we're productive. As a society, as human beings, work is so important for our mental health. If you're just sitting there not doing anything, you're not going to have that sense of worth. You're not going to have that sense of purpose. This is a world in which people are losing their sense of purpose, and work can give that to you. It has to be meaningful work, though. And I think that's the most important thing to understand. But I say all this to say, getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that are good for you, even though they are uncomfortable, I think is the biggest thing to learn from this. Something I wanted to talk about, too, is look how close. I wish I could like pinch the sky to like zoom in on this, but look how close the North Node is to Uranus. There is this ever increasing urge to, liberate, innovate, destabilize Uranus and Taurus stuff, whether that's your being comfortable, your security, your stability. And I think as this moon's in Cancer, there is this sense of like, you have to do and again, I think the other thing with the new moon in Cancer is what is going to take care of you isn't always necessarily comfortable. Eating, you guys know about my takes on, carnivore and vegetables and stuff like that. But like the idea of like eating your vegetables, like they may not necessarily be good, but they're good for you. Like that type of line of thinking of you need to do something that's good for you, and it might put you out of your comfort zone, but this is what needs to be done. And I think Wednesday is really about just kind of like sitting in that energy. Like not everything has to be about, big major astrology transit, but Wednesday is just really like, hey, we're in this new moon in Cancer. Don't be afraid to take, a step in the right direction when it comes to taking care of yourself, listening to yourself, and not just being like, oh my God, I'm uncomfortable. I need to be comfortable. Or, oh my God, I don't have everything that I need, because it's, again, Jupiter and Aries squaring. Like, I think a bad way to look at this new moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter and Aries is like, I'm not good enough because I can't provide all of my needs. Like Jupiter and Aries is like, you can really get off on accomplishing all of these things. But this new moon in Cancer squaring Jupiter and Aries is really going to be like I don't even want to say a reality check, but like, you're going to have to be really easy on yourself of like, hey, you can't just because Jupiter's in Aries doesn't mean you can do everything all of the time. And you do need your rest. And rest is really important. We spend a third of our lives resting. So I think while the moon's in Cancer on Wednesday, just really like sit in that energy and prioritize what's going to be important for you, what's going to make you feel good. But not just, make you feel comfortable and enable your shitty behaviors or enable your shitty line of thinking, but like what's actually good for you. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if it gets you out of your comfort zone. I look at, if you're looking for a supportive transit to get out of your comfort zone, moon, sextile, Uranus, and Taurus, I think that's a really, like, for example, some people are forced out of their comfort zone in uncomfortable ways. This is a comfortable way to get out of your comfort zone. I know that's a lot of comfort and uncomfort, but anyway. I think you guys see what I'm trying to say here. Wednesday's not the craziest day in the world, and I like that because we just got off this new moon, and the moon's just going to sextile Uranus. Just little baby steps, right? Just a little baby steps. You don't have to, Jupiter and Aries, everything. You can take your time. You can, be easy on yourself. So let's get to Thursday. And on Thursday, this is where the moon is going to be trining Neptune, and then it will square Mars, and then the moon will enter Leo. Kind of a mixed bag of energy on this day. Is it this button? Yes. So Thursday, the moon's still going to be in Cancer for the most part. The moon in Cancer trining Neptune and Pisces. I feel like I can't talk about Cancer and Pisces energy without talking about nostalgia and just good feelings, right? I think a lot about in the summertime, historically, this was always the time to travel because the weather was always good. And, this was the time to meet up with family and to meet up with friends because, now that the weather's good and traveling is a lot easier and food is plentiful, we bring people together for these things, and that's just really the Cancer energy in general. And I bring up the nostalgia part because I think as the moon's trining Neptune is that there's something, I think you can romanticize things really easily. My only problem is the moon is squaring Mars. So it's like, as much as this is a feel-good day, I would ask you to really kind of check your, illusions. Neptune and Pisces has been pretty fucked in terms of, look at society. I think what's really interesting about Neptune and Pisces is, media has distorted so much that it doesn't even really matter what the truth is because there are, propagated ways that, one side will see something and another side will see something and they're both right. But there's this illusion that, either side is wrong and the other one is right. There's this really, it's really contorting our beliefs. And as the moon trines Neptune, there's a contact with Neptune of like, hey, Neptune might blur things a little bit and romanticize things a little bit. And again, there's good parts of that. So there's a good feeling to this. But I look at the moon squaring Mars. And Mars is getting ready to square Pluto right now. This is a lot of tension that we've got here. And I look at the moon squaring Mars as like, the moon in Mars in Aries squaring the moon in Cancer is, I think, on Thursday, there's going to be this urge to actually get out of your comfort zone. Like, for example, Mars is in the superior position here, and the moon in Cancer is like, well, I want to feel good, and it's trining Neptune, but this is so nice and so beautiful, but Mars is superior, and it's like, well, you had your new moon in Cancer day. You had 2 days of the new moon in Cancer. Now it's time to actually get to work again. I think that's also attested by this moon opposite Pluto. Unfortunately, I look at, God, it's really interesting being an astrologer because, again, this morning when I went to the gas station, I just overheard 2 girls in a conversation just talking about how this woman was going to buy a house, but she can't because interest rates are too high. And now she's putting off this thing. And it's amazing how, again, when the Fed raises interest rates, they want to collapse the economy and take the poor, get rid of your jobs because you guys are, poor people. You don't deserve anything. Well, that's, again, I'm thinking as terms of the Fed. That's the way they think. But this moon in Cancer is going to be like, this feels good, but we got to get back to work. I think of like sleeping in the mornings and you wake up and you're like, God, this feels so good. But that alarm bell goes off and it's time to go back to work. Mars is in Aries. It's hustle time. People are like, oh, I don't like the hustle culture. Well, if you want to just sit on your ass and, not contribute to anything and just be a lazy shit, Mars is going to be in Taurus for a while. So you'll have your opportunity to do that. But right now, that's not the time. Moon squaring Mars, though, it's going to feel frustrating because you are going to have to get out of your comfort zone. And again, I've kind of brought this up before a long time ago. Let's say you do this new moon in Cancer and, you make these new habits, you reset everything, and you're like, I'm ready to go. The challenge isn't the first day. In fact, a lot of, and I'm guilty of this too, it can feel like productive. For example, when you get a planner, you can fill out your planner and get your schedule and you could feel productive, but you're not actually doing anything. This moon, and to go back to what I was saying before, the challenge isn't the first day of starting something. It's later on down the road, the third day, for example, when I quitting cigarettes, or I should really just say quitting nicotine, because I was thank God the FDA banned Juul pods. I was smoking 4 Juul pods a day. I was overdosing on nicotine every day. It was really bad. Anyway, those should not be in the hands of anybody. And if you're like, oh, I love Jewel Pods, I pray for you. I literally do. But it's not the first day of quitting nicotine that's hard. It's that third day, and then it's that first week, and then it's that first month. It gets harder and harder as time goes on. And I look at this moon squaring Mars opposite Pluto is like, and Mars is squaring Pluto here. There's a lot of opportunity to really break through some stuff and to really kind of, I don't like to say like force things, because I really like to like lean into things that are a little bit more natural, but like you are going to have to get out of your comfort zone by Thursday. I think as the moon's in Cancer and it's squaring Mars, duty calls, like, for example, you don't always really want to go to work, but you still got to pay the bills. You don't always want to do whatever, but you got to get up and get out of your comfort zone. And I think that's what a lot of Thursday is going to be about. Now, what is exciting though, is if we go back to the thing, after the moon trines Neptune squares Mars. And also I would say with the moon trining Neptune, it's like, it's hard to get out of bed when you just have a really awesome dream or you're like snuggling. Like you don't want to get out of bed, but you got to. That alarm's going off. But then the moon enters Leo. There is so much pride. Like I'm really excited for this Leo season stuff because as you guys could tell, I'm a Leo sun. I'm a 0-degree Leo sun. Pluto's about to hit my sun. So pray for me, I should say. But as the moon leaves Cancer and it goes into Leo, there is this sense of really taking pride in things. Like our emotions are connected to our will. They're connected to our identity. They are connected to our individuality. And, doing the hard things, like, it's much more validating when you turn off your bullshit. Because for example, if you're sleeping in and the alarm's going off, it's like, you're like, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just sleep in. But if you don't listen to yourself and you kind of deny, like if you told yourself you were going to do something and then you don't do it, and there's a billion reasons and a billion excuses you can give yourself. But let's say you, for example, like if you don't want to get up that day, but you do anyway, there's much more pride that you can have in that. And there's much more positive energy that you can get in that. And like as the moon going to Leo, it's like you got out of your comfort zone, you got out of bed anyway, and it feels fucking good. It didn't feel good to do that at first, but then when you actually did what you're going to say, it feels good. And that actually brings us to Friday, because on Friday, the moon is going to be in Leo and it's going to be trining Jupiter in Aries. Love that. And Mars squares Pluto. So the one thing I want to say about Mars squares Pluto is I can't get over what AOC said the other day. She was like, it's so hard to be pure in a corrupt system, which is just, that's just so funny to say. In my opinion, that's like a thought that you keep in your head as a politician. You don't say that out loud. It's really funny, but I kind of think of that with this Mars square Pluto. And I said this in my monthly overview. So on Patreon, I go over every single month ahead on a live stream. So I talk to everybody in the chats and everything like that. And then I also do rising sign horoscope. So if you guys are interested in what July is going to be like for your rising sign, go ahead and check out my Patreon. But Pluto is in the superior position to Mars here. And look, like, I think this is, I think what's hard about this is there's fights that you can fight, but you can't, like Pluto in Capricorn, like for example, if like, let's say, we got rid of everyone in, the offices right now, both Republicans and Democrats. There's so much power and corruption that is its own energy going on that like not one single fighter can demolish the whole system. And so I think Mars and Aries squaring Pluto is like, you might be a war hardened, Marine. You might have seen it all, but you in and of itself cannot defeat the establishment. And so I think Friday is going to be actually a little challenging because it's going to feel really stressful. However, there is an opportunity for a breakthrough. The moon is in Leo, trining Jupiter in Aries. You are going to feel like you can. Moon in Leo trining Jupiter in Aries is it doesn't matter if someone can or can't. If they believe that they can, they will. And so I just think that the pressure to really overcome is immense on Friday. And that's not to say that you can't. I don't want to tell anyone that they can't do it, but I want to tell you that if you are going to be on this moon in Leo and Jupiter and Aries juice on Friday and feeling like the shit, you've got a fucking battle because you're not just attacking one person. Mars squaring Pluto is like, there are the system in this world, it's, for example, like when you're like a kid, and you're like 18 trying to look for a job. It's like you need a car to get a job, but you need a job to get a car, or you need job experience to get a job, but you need, to have a job to get the experience to get a job. There's these vicious cycles that could really play out, that could really trap you. And so I look at this Mars square Pluto as that tension is going to be there. Like, well, for example, I think about like a lot about like inflation, like, like food prices are really fucking high. Gas is really fucking high. And I think there's going to be this sense of like just anger. I mean, don't get me wrong, like with Roe v. Wade being overturned, and there's so much anger right now. And I think a lot of the anger is really justified. I think on both sides. I think it's really ridiculous. We're like, why are you angry about this? Like, we're all in this together in the sense that the establishment doesn't like people and that they're trying to divide us for a reason. But I think as Mars squares Pluto, it's just going to feel like really hard. It's going to feel really hard. Pluto is a lot about fear. It's a lot about corruption. It's a lot about power. And Pluto is in Capricorn with Mars and Aries squaring it. There is the sense of fighting the establishment. There is the sense of fighting the corruption. I don't necessarily think that you can just like overcome it, but you are going to be fighting it. And some of you will overcome it. Some of you are going to be defeated by it. I mean, that's just reality. But I really think about on Friday of like, for example, Mars squaring Pluto is like, you can't destroy the whole system, but what can you do? For example, like, this is not, don't take this seriously, but this is like, what can you do to fight to fight the establishment? Like, there's people that don't pay their taxes. There's people that, go about their way to purposely, make it harder for powers that be to control their lives. And so I think with Mars squaring Pluto, there is the sense of wanting to fight that evil. I don't think it's going to be easy to overcome, but there is this really sense of like, it's time to attack it at some point. For example, you may not be able to like totally destroy it, but you can at least, the death by 1,000 cuts. This is cut number one. Maybe not cut number one, but this is a single cut into the way the systems are. And I think with Pluto and Capricorn too, there's this sense of just like, I don't know. Let me just finish by saying this moon's going to be in Leo though, and trining Jupiter and Aries. There's going to, like, again, I think it's really important. Like, if you really want this moon in Leo and Jupiter and Aries stuff to work, it's really important you take this new moon in Cancer seriously. Have your rest. Get ready for the big day. And that day is going to be Friday. And this is July 1st. This is a awesome day to start new things. This is an awesome day to just be like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going after. Mars squaring Pluto. I'm going to do what I can to get over my bullshit. I'm going to do what I can to fight the corruption. Moon's in Leo, trining Jupiter. You can do anything if you just believe in yourself. Like, really. I know that's so corny, but it's so true. Anyway, just do what you can on Friday and really start I think it's really important. If there's anything you get from this horoscope, I think, and in order to be successful on Friday, you're going to have to set yourself up for that success. You're not just going to wake up on Friday feeling amazing and great. You're going to have to earn that by doing the new moon in Cancer thing, resting, making sure you're ready to go for Friday. So we get to Saturday, and Saturday is quite a bit going on. We're going to be having Mercury trine Saturn. We're going to have Mercury square Neptune. Moon's going to square Uranus and go opposite Saturn. So I talk about this in my live monthly overview on my Patreon. And the one thing I wanted to bring up was with Mercury trining Saturn and Mercury squaring Neptune at the same time, I had a really good example of this that I want to bring to you guys. Cops. I have told you guys time and time again, don't ever talk to police. They are literally trained to get you to talk, but they want to find something that you did wrong so they can throw you in jail. I do not, if you have had, and I don't even want to go into like the cop good, cop bad thing, but no matter what, if you believe cops are good or cops are bad, you can at least agree in police training. They want you to say, hey, it's okay to talk to me. It's okay to tell me what's up, what happened. Even though you should wait and speak with a lawyer, they want you to talk to them. And there's this Mercury trine Saturn energy where there is this sense of appealing to authority. But with it squaring Neptune, and Neptune's in the superior position here, it's squaring Mercury, there's something deceptive about this. And so it's one of those things of when you're talking to a cop, You have no idea what situation you could walk yourself into. I've seen people get arrested just by like, they literally went up to a cop to have a conversation, and before you know it, they're in fucking cuffs. And with Mercury, again, with Mercury trining Saturn, there's going to be this want to appeal to authority. But with Neptune squaring it, I would be really careful about deception. Another way to look at this is with Mercury trining Saturn, there's an honesty to the conversation in when it comes to like Mercury, or maybe not honesty. That's probably not even a good word. Here's a better way to look at it. If you are lying, it's going to be a pretty good day to lie. Mercury's in Gemini. It's squaring Neptune, where it might be a little bit hard to like get by, but like your words are there, but it's trining Saturn. Like Mercury trining Saturn is like communicating with the authority, right? Having that conversation. The authority is retrograde, so it's not necessarily like, for example, a Saturn retrograde is like, there's a cop just standing there and you just want to come up and ask him a question real quick. That's like Saturn retrograde and Mercury and Gemini. I'd be like, oh, let me just ask this cop a fucking question. But Mercury squaring Neptune, you know, there's a lot of Mercury and Gemini too that's very like, you know, you got to be aware of what you're saying, because you never really like, you can admit things without necessarily saying them. And so I think with Mercury squaring Neptune, there is going to be this sense of confusion. Let me put this in another example. Maybe an authority tells you something, where there's a conversation that's had with an authority, and the message is clear, but with it squaring Neptune, the intention or what it means, there's something confusing about it. So I've been really thinking a lot about this transit because it's so interesting. Like Mercury and Gemini trining Saturn and Aquarius, on paper, that's like, yeah, this all like that's clear communication, everything makes sense. But then it's squaring Neptune. It's like, well, have you ever had, I do this all the time. Like Mercury trining Saturn is like, have you ever had a conversation with someone? You're like, yeah, that went well. We talked everything out. But then like you leave and 5 minutes later, you're like, wait a second. What did they just say? Wait, what did I say? Wait, what's going on? That's kind of like what Mercury squaring Neptune is. So I'd say on Saturday, the way I would look at this is have the conversation, but just know that not everything is clear. The intentions aren't clear. The message isn't necessarily clear, although on the surface, it seems like it. So this is one of those days where, you know, it's going to be important to kind of just be aware of what you're saying, what you're thinking. I think as Mercury's trining Saturn, it's constructive. It is, again, there's some meaning, but I think with it squaring Neptune, it's, you know, you can, for example, like you can ask questions to an authority, but then, you know, and they'll give you the answers, but then you can leave even more confused. Like if you're trying to deal with anything with like a state system or something like that, if you're trying to get like a business license or something like that, it's like, they could tell you something, but then you're like, wait, what's going on? I would just be aware that you're probably going to be a little confused on Saturday. And I think as the moon's in Leo, it's going to make this square to Uranus. A little bit of rage quit energy, but I think as the moon squares Uranus too, this moon in Leo is like, again, our emotions are really connected to our will, to our identity. And as it squares Uranus and Taurus, there's going to be a sense of disruption. Like the moon in Leo is like, this is the way I want it. And I think as it squares Uranus, it's like, well, you're going to kind of get thrown in for a loop. Like the moon in Leo is really sensitive to how they look or how they like seem to others. But then let's say, for example, like a lot of Leo has to do with humility, because a lot of Leo is about being in the light, right? Like, for example, in like yesterday, in last week's horoscope, I was sweating like crazy. And for some people, that would be like a nightmare situation. But like, you know, whatever, I got sweaty and it's kind of, you know, embarrassing on one end, but like, whatever, it's fine. I'll laugh it off. I think this moon in Leo squaring Uranus and Taurus is something's going to be disruptive. Something is going to happen that you weren't necessarily expecting. Like for me, I wasn't expecting to necessarily get like super sweaty. And then that moon goes opposite Saturn. Are you really going to let everyone else tell you? Like, for example, like Saturn, like this moon in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is like, you can't really give a shit. Like what I love about my audience is you guys are so diverse, and a lot of you actually don't agree with me on everything, which is one of my favorite parts about my audience, because that's something that I want. I don't always just want like an echo chamber, but I also can't take everything you guys say seriously. And that's not because you guys aren't like, you know, serious people or anything, but it's because I'm a Leo, I'm doing presentation. And if I get so caught up in what everyone says, I'm never going to do videos. I'm never going to say what I actually feel. And then I'm not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so this moon in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is like, you kind of just have to laugh things off, because the moon's going to square Uranus. Something disruptive is going to happen. And then the moon goes opposite Saturn. You're going to have to face the crowd, and the crowd's going to laugh at you, and they're going to throw popcorn at you and tell you that you're stupid and ugly. And that moon in Leo is like, you know, you're not for everybody. And I look at that moon in Leo as like, especially going opposite Saturn, is it's just like, own up to it. Not everyone's going to like what you have to say, and not everyone's going to like how you do things. And, for example, there's a lot of things that you guys know that you agree with me on, but then I could say one thing and then all of a sudden, everybody turns on me. So I just look at this moon in Leo going opposite Saturn while everything's here is, I think I think the other thing too is like, for example, I can sit here and explain to you all day long why this is the way that it is and blah, 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 blah. But there's going to be a group of people that no matter what I say and no matter how I say it, they're going to disagree with me and they're going to reject me. And that moon in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is like, hey, I look at like Mercury squaring Neptune and Mercury trining Saturn is like, you don't have to appeal to the authority. You do not have to appeal to the masses. Like, for example, like on my Pluto and Aquarius delineation I did, there's a lot of things I said that I could, in my opinion, that I could be looked at as part of the group. And then people are like, oh, well, you don't agree with this specific thing, so you are now rejected and outcasted. And I could sit here all day long and say, well, actually, but, and blah, 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 blah. But if you're not going to accept me for what I say, and if you're like, what's the point of arguing with that? Like this moon in Leo opposite Saturn Aquarius is like, and if you've learned anything with this Aquarius stuff, as any of the Leo placements out there already know, you can't really worry about what other people say or think, especially the group dynamic. Like you've got to be yourself. You've got to be an individual. And I think as that moon in Leo goes opposite Saturn, like don't get caught in trying to explain yourself. You don't have to explain yourself to anybody. You don't have to explain what you do. You don't have to explain why you think the way you are or why you think the things that you think that you think. You don't. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody. You just do. I would just look at Mercury squaring Neptune. Like Mercury trining Saturn squaring Neptune is like, for example, when people get canceled online, they love to be like, oh, well, actually, but the canceled people don't actually care. They don't want to hear your apology. They don't want to hear if you've righted your wrongs. They're going to still misinterpret what you say no matter what. And so I would just look at Saturday as like, don't get caught up in the noise. Like you don't have to over-explain things. Don't talk to the cops. Don't appeal to the authority because guess what? They're going to just contort your words. Oh, what? You cops do that all the time. Like you say one little thing, they're like, oh, wait, what? What's going on? Get out of the car and turn around. And, oh, you got this going on? Cops are there to put you in jail. They're not there to help you. I've never had a cop help me, ever, or my family. And I have family of cops. They never did anything. Detectives and investigators, that's different. But I look at this moon in Leo opposite Saturn, and it's not easy. It's not easy to feel rejected. It's not easy to feel, moon in Leo opposite Saturn, of course, it's not easy to also be in that limelight, like I've gotten canceled a bunch of times online. It doesn't feel good to be in that spotlight, but it is what it is. And if we've learned anything with Saturn Aquarius, it is this cancel culture stuff. I mean, like now they're even doing this with like, how he did the whole cancel Putin thing and the sanctions, like that's starting to backfire on us. But anyway, let's go to Sunday. So we wrap this week up with the moon trining Mars as it's still in Leo, and then the moon enters Virgo. Again, not a lot going on. And I think the big thing here is that moon's at that last degree of Leo going into Sunday morning. It's going to be trining Mars. I think Sunday morning is a great day to like, again, if you need to like wrap up anything or give anything one last push, I think Sunday's a great day for it. But then as the moon goes into Virgo, it's going to be about like, again, moon and Virgo, cleaning up on a Sunday, do your laundry, clean something. I think as the moon's in Leo trining Mars, there is going to be the sense of like, your emotions are super attached to your ego and your pride, but it's trining Mars. You're like, I got to fight. I got to resist. It's enabling the Mars in Aries. The moon in Leo is enabling the Mars in Aries. Like, I can't even think of a good example of this, but I think as the moon's in that last degree of Leo trining Mars, there is going to be the sense of like doing another big push to fight. And also if you need one last push of, oh, I didn't change the day here. My bad. Imagine this is 7-3, but one last push to, fight the good fight. And then the moon goes into Virgo and it's really about like, hey, do your laundry, do the dishes, clean everything up on a Sunday. Get yourself organized, get yourself prepared because we are going into next week. Whoops, that's not the right button. What's next? The next week button. Is it this button? Yes. Next week, Mars enters Taurus. Things are going to slow down. It's not going to be that easy this time around. Like if you have a lot to do and you want to accomplish, this is your last week. Mercury enters Cancer. That's pretty good. I actually like Mercury in Cancer. You got to say what you need to say. Mercury squares Jupiter, whatever. Sun sextiles Uranus, whatever. I think the biggest thing with next week is Mars enters Taurus and there's a big slowdown. So as far as final thoughts on anything, I've feel like I've been pretty good about saying what I think is going on. I would just say a lot of this week's really dynamic, and you gotta put the necessities first. You can't just Jupiter and Aries everything. And I think when the moon goes into Leo and you're starting to feel some type of way, you're going to get challenged with that. Like if you're like, I'm going to start this business and it's going to be great, the universe is going to throw you challenges to be like, really? Are you going to start that business? Really? Are you going to stand up for what you think is right? Really? Are you going to do that? And the universe is going to do that by throwing obstacles in your way, by throwing challenges. And these are not things that, like, for example, I hate when people are like, oh, I was going to do this, but this bad thing happened, so I just quit. Well, that's not really how it works. Like, if you really want to do something, you're going to get challenges no matter what, if you do it or not. But if you're wanting to pursue something, if you're wanting to start something, you're going to have challenges thrown in your way. And if you got to ask yourself, is the challenge or is the obstacle bigger than your want or your need to accomplish what you want? And you have to ask, for some people, they could say, yeah, I want to accomplish this, but this challenge is an obstacle so big that I'm going to quit. And if you quit, and if you don't feel good, it's going to reflect poorly on your sense of self, and you're not going to be able to give the way that you should to your family, your friends, the people around you. And it's going to be hard to face that resistance, but you're going to have to kind of overcome some challenges and obstacles. And I think with Mars in Aries this week, this is the week to do it. Mars goes into Taurus next week. It's not going to be that easy to overcome obstacles. It's not going to be that easy to just fight. You're going to have to kind of break through a lot of resistance this week. But I think in order to break through that resistance, you need this new moon in Cancer. You need the rest. You need to eat your meal. You need to, get enough sleep. You need to, stretch. All of those things. And then when you're able to do that on Friday, on July 1st, then you're going to be able to fight the fight. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys. I truly love and appreciate every single one of you. And I'll be seeing you next week.